Welcome to The Reins of Leadership, the podcast dedicated to helping you lead with presence and influence with trust. I'm your host, Merinda Smith, business leadership strategist, sharing actionable insights on mindset, EQ and energy uniquely illuminated by wisdom gained alongside my equine partners. Hello and welcome back. This week I've been working on a new project of mine of a pony that has, she's a gorgeous pony, she's a yearling, she's been living in the paddock with her other fellow foals, she's been weaned from her mother, and I am embarking on putting a halter on her so that I can put her on the float so that I can bring her home. So I'm taking my time with this project. It's been going on for a few weeks now. And this weekend I found myself standing in that paddock with this gorgeous girl. She's so beautiful and intelligent and a really curious soul who's known humans around her, and they've scratched her when she chooses to, but she hasn't had much handling. So she's used to humans being around her, but not having a halter on or anything like that. So she's still learning as to what it means to be in connection with us. And we're both learning what it means to trust each other. So I went out to her paddock and there was no agenda. I don't want to push her, so all I want to do is allow her to follow. And if she chooses to, then she chooses to be near me and feel safe, then that's great. And then I can make a decision where I'm going to from there. So we began in the paddock with stillness, with her being just down the ridge a little bit. And I stood back and I waited. And I just tuned into my breath. And I saw her lift her head and watching me. She listened and she felt into what was going on. And I could see her tuning into me, and I watched her tiny movements, almost like a conversation. So I was looking for, her ear moving backwards and forth, any soft exhale, or a response to a question that I hadn't yet asked. And this wasn't about control. It wasn't even about putting the halter on. It was about relationship. That relationship that we have that starts in the space between the ask and the answer. And when you invite that space to be in place, then it allows something magical to occur. So, first of all, I wanted her to follow me and move away from the other ponies that she was in the paddock with so that I could have her in a yard by herself. So once she had tuned into me, I walked off, and in the belief and trust that she would follow. And sure enough, she's right there behind me. And she walks into the yard. So with her also walked the other two. So I had to move them out. And I pushed them out. But it wasn't about them. It was about her. So to bring my energy back to her, I had to stop and breathe and just allow her to be and to feel what was going on externally. Because externally, the two ponies that had been kicked out of that yard were bucking and galloping and really arcing up because they wanted to be with her. And then on another side, there were other mares and foals, and their mares were, being protective of their foals and rushing at the yard with their ears back going, "You stay away from my babies." So there was a lot of energy happening outside the yard, and I needed to keep my energy low in the yard to allow her to feel that there wasn't a need for her to have to get out of that yard. And finally, when she felt ready, she turned around and she offered a connection. And I connected with my heart back to her. And I asked a question and she turned away. And I went, okay, you're not ready yet. And I did that a couple of times. And finally, as I waited and I allowed space in the waiting, trust began to happen. And it's the same in leadership. We often rush to fill the silence. We fix, we want to guide, we want to answer the questions of our team, we want to act straight away. But true influence, that kind that is earned and not imposed, grows when we create space. Space for others to respond, to choose, and to meet us halfway. As I stood there, this gorgeous girl took a step towards me and then another, and there was no force or pressure from me. It was purely curiosity on her behalf and trust and that silent yes. And then I knew I could actually slip the halter around her neck and on her nose. And I knew that it wasn't a moment of conquest, it was a moment of connection. And the halter going on wasn't about control, it was about that bridge, a shared understanding that said, we're in this together. In leadership, we're often called to do more, to manage, to deliver, to decide. And the world expects us to be the ones with the answers, with clear direction, ready to spring into action at any moment. And we're taught subliminally, or actually in courses, that stepping up means taking charge, setting the pace and holding others accountable. And yes, there is a time and a place for all of that, for setting the vision, for decisiveness, for driving results. And that is more about management often. Yet sometimes our greatest leadership comes from simply being grounded, open, and willing to wait for the response rather than demand it. And true leadership, I believe, isn't about what we do, it's about how we show up. When we slow down, when we resist the urge to fill every silence or control every outcome, we then create space for others to contribute, to allow the message or the question to land with them, and then to allow them to respond. What happens when we actually fill the silence often is taken as, you're just going to do it anyway, so why would they bother coming up with answers? Or they may think that you are just an authority figure and you want it done your way, you're controlling, and their way isn't going to be heard. So when you allow others to meet in their own time and in their own way. And for you as a leader, it's about recognizing that growth and insight often happen at the edge of comfort, in that space where people feel safe to question, to learn, and to try. And when we hold space and step back, we're extending an invitation. You matter here. Your thoughts matter, your process matters, and I want to hear it. It also means that it allows space for mistakes, and I always believe that mistakes are just feedback. And there's a few acronyms for that fail. I always love the one, first attempt in learning. And that's what I believe. It is your first attempt. Let's give it a go and let's learn from the process. And so when you allow space for those stepping forwards, for that feedback to come, then you're allowing creativity to evolve and for opportunities to arise, as well as your team allowing them to build resilience, to understand that, it's not always going to be right the first time, and to explore new possibilities. And I just want to bring this idea into an example. So imagine you're a leader in the middle of a critical project. Your team is stuck on a complex problem. And during meetings, there's a lot of silence. You can sense the tension and the hesitation. As a leader, you hate those silences and your impulse is to immediately step in with suggestions and to assign tasks or push for answers from others. Yet, because you've been listening to my podcasts, you listen to this episode and you think, okay, I'm going to step back and I'm going to allow space. So, in this meeting, you set the agenda and you make it clear you want to hear the thoughts from everyone, that you're okay with pauses and uncertainty, and you give the team members time to reflect rather than jumping in yourself to fill every silence. When someone offers an idea, you don't immediately evaluate it. You simply ask, can you say more about that? And allow others to weigh in. At first, it might feel uncomfortable. And there probably will be moments when nobody speaks and you might worry that nothing's going to get done and you're wasting everyone's time. Yet, holding that space, you send a powerful message. You say that you trust your team's ability and you value their input enough not to rush the process. And over time, you begin to notice that your quieter team members begin to speak up. They bring in a new perspective that hadn't surfaced before. And you notice that the team starts to engage more deeply, brainstorming together, and importantly, learning from one another's missteps and insights. Because they now know that there's room for mistakes and reflection, and people become more willing to experiment. And they develop a more creative solution than any one person can do. So it's a team effort. By allowing that space, you haven't abdicated your leadership. You've exercised it. You created the conditions for trust, collaboration, and innovation to grow, to thrive, and to flourish in your team. And that's the power of allowing. In a business perspective, it's not about stepping back entirely, but it's about making room for others to step forward. Movement isn't just progress in a straight line, but the subtle shifts, the detours, the pausing, the waiting, just as I had to pause with my pony, waiting for all that external feedback to just calm down and to find a space when she was ready to turn around and say, okay, what are we doing together? And meaning in a business sense often emerges not from what we do, but from how we reflect, how we connect, the feeling, the purpose in those quiet moments. And it's allowing that connection to form without pressure or expectation. Relationships, whether in teams, communities, or with your ponies, they thrive on authenticity. And when we drop our guard and let go of preconceived notions, genuine connection can emerge. And sometimes all it requires from you is to be present and to listen deeply. And maybe to sit with that discomfort or uncertainty, and for you to trust that something valuable will arise if you don't force it. So I'd like to ask you as a leader to take a step back and just embrace the power of allowing by not stepping in and providing that answer, but giving the space for others to answer, to respond. And maybe notice where in your leadership or your other relationships where you could step back just a little, where you could replace pressure with presence, and where you could ask a question and truly wait for the response. And remember, you've got this. Sometimes the most powerful relationship moment is not when we lead from the front, but when we quietly stand beside and let trust walk towards us. And for those of you wanting to know how that pony is going, she is responding to my leading and guidance, and it won't be long before I get her to my place. I just want to come in at the end of this podcast. I've been editing it and I've heard the bee buzzing, I've heard the noises of the birds as they're flying past, and I love keeping them in. So I hope that you enjoy the sound of nature as it comes to you across the airways and this podcast. Thanks for joining me on the Reins of Leadership. Remember to lead with presence and influence with trust. Subscribe for more insights and find resources at merindasmith.podia.com.